You can leave now and don't ever come back." That icy voice didn't come from a stranger. It came from Alina, the woman Samuel Brooks had called daughter for the past 23 years. Standing at the entrance of a luxurious mansion in the heart of Beverly Hills, the 65-year-old black man held a small suitcase in silence. His hands were calloused from a lifetime of labor. His back was slightly hunched, not from age but from years of carrying the weight of raising a child, not of his blood, but entirely of his heart. "Who are you to walk into my life and think you have the right to stay?" Alina's voice was cold. Her pristine white silk dress contrasted eerily with the fire in her eyes burning with shame and pride. Inside the living room, Brandon Keller, Alina's handsome fiancé, sat cross-legged on a luxurious Italian leather sofa, smiling with amusement as if watching a good play. He didn't need to say a word. His presence alone made it clear to Samuel he no longer had a place in this world. In the house where Samuel had laid each brick with his hands built the garage, through exhausted weekends he was now an outsider. And the most painful part, he was being treated like a nuisance in the place he once called home. But Samuel wasn't angry. He didn't rage. He didn't resist. He nodded, as if he had known the ending to this story long before. "All right, Alina, if that's what you want." His reply wasn't filled with desperation. It carried a strange calmness, as if Samuel was holding onto something enormous behind that worn-out coat. Something no one in that house could suspect. The old pickup truck turned off the cobblestone road leading out of the gated community, leaving behind the pristine white fences, the perfectly trimmed garden, and the indifferent stares from the mansion Samuel Brooks once called home. The small suitcase in the back rattled with each bump. There was nothing of monetary value inside, just a few sets of clothes, a frayed photo album, and an old wooden box locked with a key only he possessed. In the rearview mirror, Samuel saw himself an aging black man, salt and pepper hair, shoulders slumped not from fatigue, but from something more profound, a crack spreading silently across the heart. 23 years. Every night he would ask himself if he could return to that fateful day, would he have done anything differently? That year, he had been the private chauffeur for the Whitmores, a wealthy, powerful couple who owned a grand estate in the suburbs of Los Angeles. They had everything except time for their little girl, Alina, who was just 5 years old. Samuel was the only one she allowed close. The little girl wouldn't fall asleep unless he sang to her. She wouldn't eat unless he sat beside her telling stories. And then, a car crash took both her parents on a stormy night. Her relatives refused to take her in. "No time, too busy. A child would disrupt my life." Those were the reasons given by those who shared her blood. Samuel didn't hesitate. He put his name down on the guardianship form, even though he lived in a rented apartment then, and his bank account didn't even have enough for next month's rent. In the following years, he became father, mother, and the sole keeper of the flame for a home that only he could call love. He sold his only car to pay Alina's tuition at a private school. He worked night shifts at a parking garage, bringing home leftover rice because he could only afford textbooks. He took time off work to attend parent-teacher conferences, always the only one in the room wearing scuffed shoes and a faded shirt. No one asked who he was. They referred to him as the escort, the driver, the kindly old janitor. When she was little, Alina used to call him Daddy Samuel in a lisping voice. But as she grew older, that name was spoken less and less. By the time she was in college, it had disappeared completely. At her graduation ceremony, when the host announced the names of parents invited to present flowers to the graduates, Samuel stood at the end of the line uninvited. Alina gave him a smile from afar, then walked onto the stage with Brandon, who was then just her boyfriend. From the day Brandon entered her life, everything began to change. Alina started saying things like, "I'm building a professional image. Having you live with me might cause misunderstandings. At work, I just say you were someone who helped me when I was young. Please don't call me daughter in front of my friends anymore." The house once filled with photos of little Alina on Samuel's shoulders, her learning to ride a bike with him, steadying from behind, both posing in front of a Christmas tree he decorated by hand, now held only a few frames, pushed deep into forgotten corners. The others had disappeared after Brandon moved in. Once Samuel gently asked, "Did you put those pictures away?" Alina just laughed. "They don't match the aesthetic of the new house, you know that." "Not Dad." The last time she called him was on her 18th birthday, when he gave her an old necklace that once belonged to his late wife. She didn't wear it. She didn't even open the box. None of this killed Samuel. But it wore him down bit by bit, like stone eroded by drops of water for 1,000 days. And today, after being cast out of the very place he had stayed up, repainting walls and laying tiles, for he didn't cry. He wasn't angry, he didn't break anything. He was just silent, because some kinds of pain can't be expressed with tears or words. They can only be tucked away like the wooden box inside the suitcase he carried. The coffee shop, nestled quietly at the corner of South Los Angeles, had nothing remarkable: a few old wooden tables and chairs, a wheezing coffee machine, and a sun-faded sign barely legible. But for Samuel Brooks, this place held memories. He used to work here. The night shift janitor sweeps floors, wipes tables, and scrubs toilets to scrape together enough money to pay Alina's tuition. While the rest of the world slept soundly, he gathered every coin he could from those bone-tiring shifts. The glass door creaked open. Raymond Tran, an old friend, walked in with a warm smile and a tight hug. "My brother, how long's it been?" "Long enough for my hair to turn to snow." Samuel chuckled, the smile a little strained. "And Alina, I heard she's a big-time lawyer downtown now." Samuel nodded, then looked out the window. His eyes grew heavy. "Ray, I came today to tell you something. Not easy to hear." And then Samuel told him everything, every detail. From Alina's cold dismissal, to Brandon's condescending glare, to the photos taken down from the walls. Raymond fell silent. His fingers clenched the coffee cup tightly. "I can't believe this. After everything you did for her." Samuel just shrugged. "I don't blame her. Everyone has their choices. But there's something I've never told anyone, not even Alina." He pulled out his phone and opened an app. The screen lit up with a balance, 487,092.73. Raymond nearly dropped his coffee. What is this? Is that real?" "It's real," Samuel nodded. "I started investing when Alina was in college. I got a settlement from my brother's accident. Someone suggested I buy stocks in a small tech company. I took the risk, then I forgot about it. And now that company, up 200% in 15 years. Raymond stared at his old friend, stunned. "You slept on sofas, skipped buying vitamins to afford her books. And all this time, you were never really poor." Samuel nodded again. "I didn't use that money. I wanted to be sure that if Alina loved me, it wasn't because of money. I needed to know she loved Samuel, the father, not Samuel the man with over $5 million. He placed the phone down and looked Raymond straight in the eyes. "Today I got my answer." Silence followed, not the awkward kind, but the silence of awakening. Raymond placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "So, what are you going to do now?" Samuel gave a strange smile, not bitter, not smug. It was the smile of a man holding the entire chessboard while others thought he'd lost the game. "I'm going to disappear," he said. disappear from Alina's life as she wanted. But I won't disappear from the world. What do you mean I'm going to use this money to build something significant? Not for me, but for kids like Alina who were once orphans, homeless, needing someone to believe in them. Samuel pulled out a handwritten note. This is the number for a financial firm called Harrison and Associates. Call them, tell them you have a serious investor. Don't mention my name. Raymond looked at the note. This firm serves the elite in Beverly Hills. They only take clients with a net worth of over $5 million. Exactly, Samuel nodded. That night, Samuel returned to a modest hotel in the city center. No one greeted him, nor was there a warm dinner. No doors flung open in welcome, but he sat at the desk, opened the old wooden box, and pulled out a stack of documents, bank statements, stock certificates, investment papers. He didn't write a plan for revenge. He wrote a blueprint for a humanitarian empire. A scholarship fund worth $200,000 a year, 3 community centers for youth, and a launch event, a charity gala hosted at the location where his daughter was planning her wedding. No bitter words, no mention of pain, just a quiet return of the man who had once been cast aside without needing to reclaim dignity because he had never lost it. Outside, Los Angeles buzzed as always, with cars flashing signs and people chasing dreams. Inside a small third-floor hotel room, Samuel Brooks sat at his desk, eyes calm but firm. The pen trembled in his hand, not from age but from emotions swelling within. It was time to reappear. The right way. The appointment Raymond scheduled came just a day later. The headquarters of Harrison and Associates towered above LA's financial district. Everything was wrapped in polished glass, reflecting the status of those who passed through its doors. But no one there knew that the black man in a deep blue suit, shoes neatly polished but old, waiting in the reception area, was a millionaire. When Jonathan Harrison, the managing director, came out and read the file, his expression shifted instantly. Mr. Brooks, he bowed slightly. Samuel nodded, rose, and shook his hand politely. I want to invest, not to profit for myself, but to generate value for the community. Inside the elegant conference room, Samuel spread out his documents. He spoke of scholarships, youth centers, and the dream of building a support network for people society often overlooks just because they weren't born in the right place. Jonathan was a little surprised. With your influence and budget, we could host a launch event. A charity gala, perhaps, Samuel smiled. Perfect. But I have one condition: do not reveal my identity until that night. Jonathan nodded, beginning to understand he was dealing with someone unlike anyone he had ever met. 1 week later, invitations were sent across the city. Familiar names from the elite circles, entrepreneurs, investors, lawyers, artists, media figures, all eager to attend a prestigious evening hosted by a mystery benefactor. At the same time, inside the Whitmore and Keller law firm, Alina showed off her engagement ring to colleagues. Brandon and I are getting married at the Beverly Hills Country Club. The same place is hosting the gala next week. Destiny, right? She laughed proudly, unaware that destiny was about to shift. Meanwhile, Samuel worked tirelessly. He selected every organization to receive funding, interviewed representatives from each scholarship program, and double-checked every investment budget. No planning team member knew why he was so invested in this gala. They didn't know he was about to come face-to-face with the person who had denied his existence in front of society. The day of the event arrived with clear skies. Sunset cast golden light across the city's most prestigious club lawn. Luxury cars lined up, gowns, tuxedos, champagne glasses, and piano music exuded breathless elegance. Alina arrived like a goddess, arm in arm with Brandon, her head held high, certain this was the world she belonged to. No Samuel could embarrass her here. Finally, an event without any misplaced guests, Brandon said, adjusting his bow tie. Alina nodded, unaware that the misplaced man owned the entire evening. At precisely 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. The MC took the stage, his smile beaming. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to welcome a mysterious benefactor who has pledged $2 million for youth scholarships and 3 community centers in LA. The room went silent, curious, breathless. Please welcome the man behind it all, Mr. Samuel Brooks. A smattering of applause, then stunned silence. Alina froze. Brandon turned toward her wide-eyed. That name couldn't be. Not the man they'd just forced out of their lives less than a week ago. Samuel walked out in a finely tailored tuxedo. The spotlight lit up his face. His eyes held no hatred, no bitterness, only the gaze of a man who had finally returned to where he belonged. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Tonight, I'm not here to be praised. I'm here to restore something this society often forgets, that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account, but by how they treat others." The packed hall was dead silent. The murmurs faded one by one as Samuel Brooks stood under the spotlight. He was no longer the man with the suitcase walking away from his home a week ago. He was now a distinguished benefactor who had just pledged millions for education and the community. Alina sat not far from the stage, her hand clenched around a wine glass, eyes wide and unblinking. Samuel Brooks kept ringing in her mind like an alarm bell. No, it can't be. Beside her, Brandon began to squirm. He leaned in, whispering urgently, "That's him, right? That's your Samuel." Alina didn't answer. Her face had gone pale. On stage, Samuel slowly scanned the room. There was no fear in his expression, no shame. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice deep and warm, "I come from a different world than most people here. For most of my life, I was a driver, a janitor, a security guard. I never had a college degree. I never owned a company. But I once raised a child, an orphaned child no one else wanted. I didn't take her in because I was wealthy. I took her in because I believed love was enough to start." The room was still as stone. "I spent 23 years working day and night, not for my dreams, but for hers. I believed that love, sacrifice, and giving would one day be understood." Samuel paused. His eyes fell exactly where Alina sat. "But 1 week ago, I was reminded of an important truth. Love does not guarantee gratitude." Whispers began to rise. A few eyes turned toward Alina. She lowered her gaze, breathing unevenly. She could feel the stares piercing through her flawless makeup, $8,000 dress, and expensive engagement ring. On stage, Samuel remained calm. "I'm not here to complain. I'm here to say that even when cast out and labeled a burden, I still believe in what I did. Because true love doesn't need acknowledgement to exist. But justice must be spoken out loud." Brandon suddenly stood up, forced a strained laugh, and raised his voice, trying to ease the tension. "Samuel, long time no see. Alina always spoke of you with such gratitude." Samuel looked at him, his gaze sharp as ice, though his tone stayed composed. "Mr. Keller, you told me I didn't belong in your social circle last week, and you were right. I don't belong in a world where skin color, titles, or car brands measure a person's value. But tonight I choose to stand in a different circle where power is used to lift others, not push them down." The room erupted in applause, first sparse, then growing into thunderous clapping. People stood. Some guests wiped away tears. Others glanced toward Alina with uncertain expressions. For the first time in her life, she felt exposed. Not because someone criticized her, but because silence had fallen over a crowd of hundreds as truth was brought into the light. Samuel closed his speech with the simple statement, "Tonight I am not here to retaliate. I'm here to prove one thing: love is not weakness. Love is strength, and those who dare to love are those who cannot be cast aside forever." After the gala, Samuel didn't stay long. He declined media photos and gave no interviews. He left quietly, just as he had always lived. But the aftershock was anything but quiet. The next morning, every major newspaper featured Samuel Brooks in a dignified tuxedo standing beneath the logo of his charity foundation. Headlines read, "Abandoned father becomes million-dollar philanthropist." "Never judge by occupation, the story that shook Beverly Hills." "Love denied but triumphed in silence." As for Alina, she didn't show up at the office that day. Her inbox overflowed with emails from clients, supervisors, and co-workers. But there was only one question being asked. "Who is Samuel Brooks to you?" A simple question, but now she no longer had the standing to answer it. The next morning, Alina Whitmore awoke to a silence that felt unnatural. No familiar ringtone, no assistant's message, no urgent meeting emails, only a heavy echoing stillness. And on the table, a copy of the Los Angeles Times with a full-page headline, "Disowned Foster Father, Samuel Brooks's Rise Humiliates the Elite." Just below was a photo of Alina sitting in the gala crowd, her face frozen, clutching a wineglass tightly, while Samuel stood on stage glowing, poised, and in full command. She flung the newspaper to the floor, nearly bursting into tears from humiliation. But before she could react, the phone rang. "Alina, we need to talk." The senior executive at her law firm, Henderson and Klein, had a cold and cutting tone. "The firm is facing backlash from clients and the media. What happened at last night's gala doesn't align with the image we expect from a brand representative." "What are you saying?" Alina tried to keep her voice steady. "We're placing you on indefinite leave pending internal review. And, I'm sorry, but your company accounts will be temporarily suspended as of today." Alina collapsed into her chair. No one else was in the room. No one was beside her. No excuse she could offer would undo what she had done, turning her back on a great man in front of hundreds of witnesses. She opened her laptop. Hundreds of online comments flooded in. Who does she think she disrespects? The man who raised her for 23 years. Shameful to use wealth to erase family. He's pure class. She's the opposite. Across the city, Brandon Keller wasn't faring any better. Inside the glass-walled office of Keller & Sons, his father, Richard Keller, glared at a giant TV screen displaying Samuel's speech, his face dark. "This is the man my son tried to erase from his life," he growled. "Dad, I didn't know he was wealthy like that." Brandon stammered, "It doesn't matter if he's rich or not. What matters is, you made our company a laughingstock. All our partners cancelled their meetings with you. Stocks dropped the moment your name came up in that class-based scandal." Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "This kind of negative PR is enough for me to strip you of every position in this company. As of today, you're suspended indefinitely." Brandon was stunned. He had never been rejected, humiliated, or excluded from any circle of power. But today it all came crashing down because of a man he once called invisible. 1 week later, Alina's penthouse was hit with a foreclosure notice from the bank for missed payments. Her credit cards were frozen. Her account balance had shrunk to just a few $1,000s, barely enough to survive a month. Brandon, he vanished. No message, no apology, no goodbye. Only a single line in an email: "I can't be associated with someone whose image is this damaged. My career is at risk." The end. Meanwhile, Samuel Brooks stayed out of the spotlight. He refused interviews and avoided cameras. He didn't need another victory. He only needed to build what others never believed he could, quietly a legacy. The Samuel Brooks Foundation was officially launched. Hundreds of scholarship applications poured in every day. The media began calling him the father of second chances. No one mentioned Alina in the stories anymore. One afternoon at a small cafe, Alina sat alone, wearing a wrinkled shirt, hair tied back messily, filling out job applications. She had applied to 12 companies. 9 hadn't responded. 3 rejected her immediately upon learning her name. Her eyes fell on a flyer for the Brooks Foundation, a photo of Samuel smiling, hand resting on the shoulder of a young black teen, eyes bright with hope. In the corner, a small line of text read, "Everyone deserves someone who believes in them, even when the world no longer does." Alina folded the flyer, eyes welling with tears. For the first time in years, she understood something Samuel had always taught, but she had never truly listened to. Reputation can be borrowed, but character must be built daily by how we treat others. That afternoon, Alina stepped out of an employment center, clutching a wrinkled job application folder. She had studied at a prestigious university, worked at a top law firm, and was once the face of glamorous galas. But today, she was a crossed-out name. The streets were crowded, everyone hurried by. But inside Alina, time felt frozen. Everything now seemed to speak in silence. She turned into an old coffee shop in the south of the city, where she used to go back in her student days before the black credit card and the $50,000 engagement ring. The shop was small, with rustic wooden tables and gentle jazz playing from an old speaker in the corner. Without hesitation, she ordered a black coffee, the only thing she could still afford. When the barista brought the cup, they handed her a small note. "Someone left this for you." Alina unfolded it. Just one line handwritten, "If you're ready to understand, call your father, SB." She sat frozen, her lips pressed tight, her eyes slowly filled with tears. That evening, Alina gathered her courage, picked up her phone and dialed the number that once belonged to the man she had rejected. The line rang, once, twice, 3 times. Then a familiar voice came through Alina. She went quiet for a second. I got your message. I don't know what to say. It's all right. I know you're going through a hard time." Samuel's voice was still warm and slow, just like always. Not angry, not bitter. "I want to make you an offer. But you have to hear me out before you answer." Alina nodded, though no one could see. "Okay, I'm listening. My foundation is short-staffed on admin support, organizing scholarship files, preparing documents, and tracking students' progress. The pay isn't high. No perks. No one will know you're my daughter. You'll be a trainee like everyone else." Alina stayed silent. "But if you accept, there's one condition. You'll have to work directly with the kids who received scholarships. You'll have to hear their stories. You'll have to understand lives you've never looked at before." Alina swallowed hard. "And if after some time you truly change and understand what I tried to teach you, we'll start over. From the beginning, as 2 people." Silence lingered. She exhaled, her eyes red. "I accept." 3 days later, Alina began her new job. The Samuel Brooks Foundation office wasn't glamorous. White walls, simple wooden desks, just enough lighting, but the energy was vibrant. Her co-workers were people who had once been homeless single mothers, immigrant students, and young people who had turned their lives around. They worked with all their heart, not for fame, but because they had once received help, and now wanted to give. Alina sat at a desk near the window, sorting files, typing acceptance letters, and proofreading every detail. One afternoon, a 17-year-old boy, Deshaun, walked into the office, awkwardly holding a form. "Ma'am, I don't know how to fill this part out." Alina smiled and pulled a chair beside him. She walked him through it carefully, slowly. Every time the boy smiled, she saw something familiar in his eyes. Just like herself, back when Samuel stayed up late helping her with homework. Day by day, Alina began to change. She no longer cared about reputation. Her heart felt lighter every time she helped someone complete a form or listened to a child talk about walking through rain every day to get to school. One day after finishing the last file of the day, she looked up and saw Samuel standing at the office door. His gaze was gentle. His smile was as light as a breeze. She stood. "Dad." For the first time in years, she repeated the word. Not out of politeness, not out of guilt, but from a deep, nameless longing that had grown inside her since losing everything. Samuel walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, but don't promise me anything. Just keep going. Let your heart lead the way." That night, in her modest rental apartment, Alina sat reviewing files of students preparing for interviews. She no longer thought about the past. She thought about the future, not just her own, but of children who had never had anyone believe in them. And finally, she understood Samuel had never demanded that she be successful. He only wanted her to be a good person. Samuel Brooks stood on stage at Harvard University's auditorium 2 years after that fateful gala. Behind him hung a banner for the event, From Darkness to Light, a journey of trust and social justice. Under the spotlight, he wore a simple suit. No medals, no jewelry, just a microphone in his hand and over 500 students waiting in silence for him to speak. "I was once called a burden, the past, unsuitable for the image of success." He began, voice steady and deep. "But today I'm not here to speak about pain. I'm here to share what can happen when you choose to love even after being rejected." After the talk, hundreds of students lined up to meet him, asking for signatures, advice, or to offer a heartfelt hug. In the front row, Alina sat quietly. She had now graduated with a degree in social work and was the scholarship program manager at the Samuel Brooks Foundation. No more designer dresses, no more diamond rings. She wore a simple blouse, hair tied back, and her eyes warm and bright, nothing like the proud woman who once sat at that gala cloaked in ego. When her father stepped down from the stage, she stood, walked up and hugged him. "Thank you, Dad, not just for not giving up on me, but for giving me a chance to find myself again." The Samuel Brooks Foundation had become one of the most impactful non-profits on the West Coast. Every year it awards over 200 scholarships to underprivileged students. The 3 community centers it had built now served thousands of youth each month with classes, counseling, and life skills. What began with a man once overlooked had become a support system for an entire generation. One day, a 16-year-old Latino boy named Luis entered Alina's office. He had just received a scholarship and was preparing to move out of state for boarding school. "Ms. Alina, thank you. I don't know if I'd still be in school if it weren't for this scholarship." My mum cried with joy. Alina smiled, handing him a notebook. "Write down everything you learn. One day you'll teach someone else." The boy held the notebook tightly. That night in her small apartment, Alina sat at her desk, looking through old photos. Little Alina on Samuel's shoulders, laughing across a field, eyes wide with trust and innocence. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a letter, the only handwritten one she had ever written to him. "But never sent, Dad. I used to think the world should respect me for my name, degree, and status. But I was wrong. What you built wasn't just a house, it was character, not a successful daughter, but a decent human being. Thank you for teaching me that, with your life." From a father without a name, without blood ties, without recognition, Samuel had left behind something no wealthy man could ever buy. I hope that the one who is shunned today will be the one who changes the world tomorrow. And Brandon Keller, after the scandal, his family pulled all investments. Brandon tried to launch his firm, but no one signed contracts. Every time his name appeared online, it was under the same headline: the man who rejected his fiancée's father and lost everything. Brandon never returned to Beverly Hills. In one rare television interview, a host asked Samuel, "Did you ever want revenge?" Samuel just smiled. "No. Revenge is when you make others hurt. But me, I wanted to win by helping others heal." Samuel Brooks's story became required reading at multiple universities. A documentary on his life won international awards. His foundation continued receiving support from those who were once outsiders and had succeeded thanks to the scholarships he created. But to him, none of that mattered more than one recent evening, when Alina, sitting across the dinner table, placed her hand over his and said, "Dad, today I'm not just grateful to you. Today I want to be part of the healing journey for others, just like you were for me." Samuel looked at her and smiled. He said nothing, because he knew not all forgiveness is spoken aloud. Some apologies take a lifetime to prove. And Alina at last had begun that life.